Hello, welcome to today's HR Huddle. I'm Tamera Loerzel, and thank you for being with me today, Samantha. Good to have you here. First Monday of October, and we know that there's many deadlines happening right now. We might be midstream of one right now, depending on what discipline you're in or what service area or consulting projects you might be working on, plus the transition to fall. Although Samantha and I were just talking that it does not feel like fall here in the Midwest, in Minnesota and in Michigan. It's been high 80s. We hit 91 yesterday. So anyway, lots happening, and these peak periods can maybe raise some attention to how we might work differently or value things differently, and it's come up a little bit in some of our coaching calls. And so we thought we would take today and spend a few minutes talking about how to understand and learn about and then embrace other people's motivators. And I don't know if you've noticed, but your motivators might not be the same as your colleagues or your team members or your partners. And so that's one of the things that we talk about a lot in our coaching with our leadership participants and in our coaching programs that we have, is to learn about our coachees' motivators, because it's helpful for us as coaches to know what their motivators are, but then also to teach them to learn about the motivators of others on their team, especially those that directly report to them and or they work consistently with on engagements or clients or things like that. They're in their groups or their pods or whatever that might be. So we thought for HR professionals and those that are working with talent and on talent programs, this is really a good discussion to have, and step back and say, how are we learning about people's motivators and what does that look like? So I don't know if there's anything else to set that up, Samantha, that you want to say, or, go from there.
Yeah, I think we can go from there because, I think the key piece is that really recognizing that there are 9 professional motivators. And if you're not familiar with the 9, we can certainly add a link or send you an article that we have on the 9 professional motivators. And what's really important to note is that we are all motivated by them to some extent. It's just at certain times in our life, they may change and other ones become more important. And what's key as a leader is to realize that no one of them is wrong. And we can sometimes make people wrong about what they're motivated by. We sometimes people will get nervous to share the fact that they're motivated by compensation because they're afraid of being perceived that they're just in it for the money. And what we have to realize is that for some people, that might be the biggest motivator, and that is not a wrong thing. And that doesn't mean that their motives are wrong. It might be that they have a growing family and maybe they are the bigger breadwinner in their family, or they've got people about to go to college, or they're caring for elderly parents, and compensation and benefits may be a really important thing for them because of what they want to deliver to their families or to their loved ones and so on. And that does not make them wrong or give them the wrong motive for having that. And so we just have to be so careful with it.
Yes, agreed. I think it's a good point. There's 9 motivators, like you said. And, compensation and benefits is one of them. And that's often the one that we go to. So I think that's, brilliant that you pointed that one out, because we often, think about that. Like that's what our number one motivators are in studies. You've probably read studies in SHRM or other, HR publications, that compensation is not typically the number one reason that people leave their firm. They leave their firm for a variety of reasons, and they're motivated by different things. And it could be flexibility and time off. It could be acknowledgement and transparent communications. It could be technology and really efficient processes, especially for our next gen folks. It could be personal development or growth and responsibility. Camaraderie and fun. That's one, Samantha, I think people get made wrong for, that it shows up in their top 3. You're like, we're here to work. I need somebody to lead the fun in the firm. So those people that are motivated by fun, they hopefully are on our fun committee and, leading initiatives and coming up with ideas. And we should be deploying that. We should know that. And so it's important to understand what those motivators are. They're all important, but we do rate the top ones differently. So it does get hard to rate them. When we have people rate them 1 to 9, we have them, force rank them and say, which is your most important. It can get difficult, but it's good to know, because I want to say, if camaraderie and fun is one of your top motivators, how are we doing in that area? Do you feel like it's fun? Do you feel like you've got friendship at work? Which is one of Gallup's number one leading indicators of engagement, by the way, that people answer the question, do you have a friend at work? You say yes. So that camaraderie and fun is super important. We'll say it's important to me, not because I'm so much into the fun part, although that's great, but I can get all the other things somewhere else. I can get comp, I can get flexibility, I can get growth and responsibility. But if I don't enjoy the people I work with, then all bets are off. So we really got to probe and understand, what those are.
Yeah, no, so true. So true. And, sometimes we can get those perceptions that if you're just here for the fun, are you going to work hard enough? Or you can get fun outside of work. You don't need that at work. But it's so true. We need to feel that we have a sense of belonging with the people that we work with. And all those other things, like you said, it's easy to shop those, especially something
Right.
like compensation, where you have more states that are even requiring that the salaries have to be posted with the job posting. So, I mean, that's starting to become public information. And I think so important. Another one that that's in the 9 motivators is making a difference. And that's one that when we don't know that that's their motivator, it can really easily be missed, especially with some of your more junior staff who may not have as much of the client or the direct client interaction. And so when we're coming out of a busy time like we are, right? The extensions, audit season, that sort of thing, and you have some more junior people on your teams that making a difference is their top motivator, but they've been heads down, plugging away, pounding through numbers, staring at a computer screen, and they don't get to see the impact of what they're doing. They're just feeling like a cog. They're just feeling like I'm just churning stuff out and I don't see what any of this means. And I'm tired. And maybe, flexibility and time off is another important one to me. And that's one definitely waning for me right now, too. And now all of it makes me quite vulnerable to a retention issue. And that's where, again, I started with the compensation conversation because I see so many firm leaders who they're trying to solve the retention problem by saying, well, we got to figure out the right compensation. And that's what we're saying here is we need to have an honest conversation about what the motivators are. But when you're asking that question, be so genuine in realizing and coach your leaders that there is not a wrong motivator, and that they're not going to be judged by what they put on there. It's only going to give your leaders the right information to be one size fits one and make sure that person does stay with you, and makes it to the next busy season and doesn't say, I have to find something else because this just isn't for me.
Yeah. And I think you had an example that you were worried about, Samantha. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, yeah. So there was an example of someone who they weren't talking motivators, but the person genuinely just shared that they, compensation wasn't important. That's what they said. And that they also said they wanted the flexibility to be able to travel and to have fun. And this leader that they said it to completely responded with, oh no, you need to always care about compensation, which then told the person, okay, well, what's important to you is not really what you should say. And then also, because you want to go travel, well, then you must not really have a commitment to this firm because you're a young professional and you should want to be heads down. And that's not going to make somebody feel heard. that's not going to make somebody feel like, hey, I have found my tribe, my people that understand what's important to me. And what I think in the accounting profession, especially in that scenario, is gosh, what a profession that I could so easily plan my travel, right? Because we have such clear boundaries around some of those deadlines. And I know they can get extended at times. So I'm not saying that. But for the most part, we really know when those crunch heavy times are in this profession. And then what are your months that truly you could go plan something amazing? And so they could have that. But because there was this perception that that meant, man, you just must not be fully invested, then are you a right fit? And I think we have to be so careful about that. And especially you and I were talking, Tamara, that that's a trend with some of these next generation that are coming in too, and what's important to them.
100%. I think that flexibility and, work-life integration is so important to our next gen, and they want to, be able to have it all and, figure out how to have it all. And I think that's our job as leaders and as HR professionals and, team managers to say, here's the times where, we might need to flex up, in our flex language.
Mhm.
And then here's the times where we have more flexibility. And if you want that 2-week or 3-week, trip to Europe, and I do have a senior manager that does that every year. She's done it forever, and with a colleague at her firm, and they plan it, they communicate it, they manage it well in advance. But it's something that is super important to them, and then they usually do something shorter in the spring, individually or with family or whatever. But super important for them, and for us to infer that desire to travel or that desire for flexibility means you're not going to put in the effort or care about your career, I just think is a miss. And so we have to be super careful about that. And that's the risk that we take with these motivators is, I started by saying we manage, we communicate based on our motivators, based on our preferences. So if that's not my preference, if my preference is maybe increased responsibility and making a difference, and compensation, maybe those are my top three, and I'm managing and trying to engage and develop maybe a young professional whose top motivator is flexibility and time off, and maybe personal development and camaraderie and fun, or technology and processes. I need to understand that, partly because I don't want to then try to incent them or engage them based on what I'm inspired by. It backfires if you haven't noticed, but also because they are going to not feel engaged and motivated, and we'll be scratching our head going, I don't understand. So those 9 motivators, and I saw that Caroline put those a link to the article in the chat there. So go get it and download it. We would have you rank those, rate those 1 to 9, what's most important, and have your team do it. Like Samantha said, make it safe, and whatever your answer is, it is. And then share them with each other. You also can find what your team motivators are. I could do that by the tax department or by the CAS group or by the consulting group. I could do it for my HR or my operations team. It's super insightful to see what we're motivated by as a team, but then also my individual. So I can say, okay, making a difference in technology and efficient processes is your top motivators, Samantha. Tell me about that. Because that's the other thing. We all define them differently. Flexibility and time off, we define that differently. I want flexibility and time off, but I work a very full-time job. But I want flexibility to be able to attend my son's dive meets, or I want flexibility, to help my mom, if she needs something. It's just me and my brother and, my elderly mom. Or flexibility and time off to be able to take a 2-week RV trip, which I did, this summer. But then that doesn't mean not putting in the effort and, those peak periods or making deadlines and doing quality work. It doesn't mean that's not happening. So we have to ask them. Now, flexibility and time off for somebody could be, I want reduced hours. And sometimes we make up like that's the only definition of, flexibility and time off is part-time. That's one version of it. So I have to ask. I have to go find out. And so that's something you can do, from the HR group. That's something you could teach your coaches to do as we talk about getting to know people, asking these questions. And, it's a way in to get to know your people is these motivators.
Oh my gosh. Yes, it's so true. And it really feeds, especially for some, another motivator is frequent and transparent communication. And I mean, that's
Yeah.
what you're starting to do by even talking about those motivators, right? Is let's talk about it. Let's pull it back. Let's find out what this is and what's important for everybody. And the other element with what you were saying too of, if we expand this beyond our individual team, and maybe you do this firm wide, and maybe your firm has offices across the country or multiple offices, you might even start to notice by office or by region that the motivators are different. And so one other element to know is that sometimes people will note their motivator by what they don't have right now. So, for
Mhm.
example, if you have maybe a particular office, they are phenomenal with the team events and the fun and the culture, and they've just really embraced that. And then you look at their motivators and you see none of them have that as a top motivator. Well, it might be because, quite honestly, they really feel that they have that. And so what's motivating them is maybe more growth and responsibility, or feedback and acknowledgement is more important to them because they're needing more of that for them. So just want to highlight that sometimes we can look at just that one data point of the motivators and feel like, okay, this is what we need to focus on, and miss some of the other pieces. So wanted to highlight that element, that just keep in mind that it can change, or if we do have a lot of it going on, that could be why. So do kind of that cross reference of maybe an employee engagement survey or employee surveys that you do, and where those data points may cross each other to give you some additional insights of what's happening in various offices.
That's a really good point. And I guess the only other thing I'd add is that it can change. So
Yes.
you had kind of pointed to that earlier when you said it, but I just wanted to highlight, we would check in on motivators at least annually. It could be one of your check-ins, or, maybe your mid-year check-in or whatever. It could be just, are these still your top motivators? Is there any that shifted or changed? Also give people permission to come and say, now that they've got the 9 motivators, they've got the nomenclature, they can say, flexibility and time off now just became important to me, because we're planning this big, family reunion or trip, or maybe, we're expecting a baby, or maybe compensation became important because I want to buy a house.
Mhm.
And so it could shift, or growth and responsibility. It could feel like maybe I'm feeling stale and I want to progress faster. It gives you a way to talk about it and permission to talk about it, but also it just realize it can change. So you could go, I thought that, increased responsibility and challenge was a motivator. Now they're pushing back. Well, maybe they're full. And so maybe we need to figure out, their job. And it just gives you some more language and more ways to have insights to how do we have people win in their careers at your firm. And that's how we want to use them.
Exactly, exactly. So it's a really positive exercise that you can do, and
Yeah.
it's a short one too. It's not like a big employee survey that you have to put together, and it's not something that takes a lot of structure to even organize. But one thing you may want to do if you're going to offer this to your leaders or to teams, as the HR professionals, you may offer them, doing something like a Survey Monkey or something along those lines that will show them a chart or an aggregate of the information, just to be able to make it easier. And that's another thing, is that as leaders, we're constantly talking to them about the need to delegate, and how very important it is. And this is a great exercise. They could collaborate with you as HR professionals to get support and help on doing this kind of exercise.
Yeah.
Because I know we talk to a lot of leaders and they say, oh, this makes all kinds of sense, and yes, I should do this, and I'd love to know this information, and then they never execute on it because they don't have the time. And so you stepping in and saying, hey, let's collaborate on this. When's a good time to roll this out to your team, and what's a tool that we could use to collect the data so for easier for your review, and so on. But that would just be such a lovely way that you could even introduce this, and not feel like it's another thing added onto their plate.
Yes. Great. Love it. So hopefully this gave you some ideas, to explore with your team and to go learn more about their motivators. And maybe you start with your team. Maybe you start with your team and the HR team. That might be a way to pilot this. But we welcome any questions about it and anything that you might be doing around engaging and motivating your team and learning about people's motivators. So check out the article that's in the link, and we look forward to seeing you next week. We hope you have a great week, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.